Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
All right. So I know previously I said, hey, let's roll past XYZ chapters and get right into David. Right into David. And man, I think in my vigor and in my excitement, that's where we was heading to. I was ready to just talk about the king. I was ready to slash some swords, learn about mighty men fighting lions, running across all types of stuff. But then God said, slow it down. I said, come on, God, I'm ready to tell a story. I got this one. This is one that you showed me, man. I was ready to do some leaps over the table. Eric was going to catch me, do a little flip to make it work. I was going to look out for the knee. I got you, though. But he was going to come up with some great feats. But some said, tone it down. Tell the parts that are hard, because the hard parts make sense. And if you're not making sense to the people that are receiving the information, then what is the point? Right? So I could sit here and droll you with all the names for correction and try to say everyone, but if I don't catch the essence of these tribes and what these tribes were doing and how they were established in the land of Israel, what's the point of knowing the name, right? Some of these tribes, when we hear what they're doing, we see that not only are we talking about their names, we're also talking about the character of the tribes. Because the character of the tribes, remember a lot. Y'all remember we talked about the Benjamites long, long ago? What was their character? It was a scrappy bunch, right? They were small, but they were scrappy. Before they would go, and then eventually the rest of the Israelites got together and said, we need to take care of them. It got so bad that they said, wait a minute, we took care of them too much. And the guy said, well, give them the women from, right. So we see that the Benjamite clan has had people given to them to establish them. So here's a breakdown of chapter 4. We left off in chapter 4. Where we leave off at? Y'all remember? See, everybody wanted to go to 9, but where do we really leave off at? The family is, oh, that's too far.
I gotta start there.
That's 4?
No, it's 2.
That's 2. 3. So we had 3. So we passed 3. We on 4.
Where you gonna leave it tonight? That's where we are.
That's what I like. Perfect. Say again. Yeah, it was quite a few names, and we stopped at Solomon. We're gonna go to 4, because remember we talked about Solomon and how we are going to get in detail about his line, his lineage, and a walk from David to there. In fact, as I was studying and I started to go on my notes, I actually found the end that we were looking for. Y'all want to hear the end? How it all goes together? Let me see if I can get this right. I love putting stuff together. It shows you the things are meant to be studied. And it said, and the acts of the King David. This is First Chronicles 29. Excuse my eyes. 29 and 30. All right. All right. Now remember where we started. Why we jumped to Chronicles? Because Kings ended and David starting his reign, and Second Kings started. Solomon ended with David. Second Solomon started with David ending his reign, and First Kings started with what? David being old. But here, and this is why I bring you here, just to show you that everything that we're going to talk about in between is locked in between here to finish. Y'all asked me to show you the end, and I'm going to show you. And it says in the Acts of King David, first and last, see, they are written in the book of Samuel the seer. That's First and Second Samuel. That's what they called the prophets, the seers. In the book of in the book of Nathan the prophet, and Gad the seer. Again, these are non-canonical books, but they do have some value. And when we get to certain parts, I'll show you what things that Gad was actually speaking to David more in depth in some of those non-canonical books to bring the whole thing and the whole picture and to understand it. But as you can see, we see that David's story did have an end, right? All right, I just wanted to show you that. So I like to tell people on the path we're going, I don't want you to feel like you're being misled. I'm taking you exactly to where we needed to go. All right, so we're going to pick up on 4, because in 3, they were talking about David's kin. It got down to Solomon. We said, hey, let's stop at 3, but then we're going to go back because they bring back in Judah. All right, now we're not going to belabor all the names. We met a lot of people from the clan of Judah early in our conversation. So let's just get to some of the bare bones of what some of the people that are going to be keynotes or in your studies. If you have not read up to Chronicles, these are some of the things you may come across. And these are the people they're talking about in the clan of Judah. So Caleb, right? We heard Caleb mentioned. Caleb was mentioned for his faithfulness. Caleb is a prominent figure in the Bible, known for his faithfulness, trust in God. If you want to hear more about Caleb and some of the things he did, Caleb's inheritance, Caleb's faithfulness, rewards that was given to him, a special inheritance promise, you can find that in Joshua 14, 6 through 15. Now, if you want to write all these down, you can, but if you're just going to study them in the process or in a route of going, I'm just showing you if you want reference to go back to see what some of the things did the tribe of Judah. If you're specifically in your studies studying the tribe of Judah, these are some of the places you'll pull that well of information from along with the scriptures. Because remember, they were keeping lineage and history for a very particular reason, and we'll see that at the very end as well. All right, so then we got Judah's descendants, about in Chronicles 4, 1 through 8. All right, and in 4, 1 through 8, the chapter begins with the list of the sons and the descendants and their descendants, including Shelah, Perez, and Zariah. We talked a little bit about them in the previous chapter. This 1 through 4 provides genealogy and family line, highlighting notable figures like Perez, who was mentioned as an ancestor of the royal line of Judah. Now we're starting to talk about what? Royal lineage, and it's being very, very specific in what we're talking about. What royal line are they pointing to?
David's royal line.
Particular David, but the clan that he came from, which was Judah. Now, we know the order of children, all 12 of them, in the order they was born in, right? Anybody in here know the order of children and all they was born in? Raise your hand. All right. So who should have received the birthright? Who? He was the first, right? So why is Judah the one that we're specifically, why is this the line? Reuben was bad. So we know that in the story of the lineage, we know that Reuben cast. But who would it go to next? If it's not Reuben, it should have been the next one. Whatever the next oldest child is. Come on, we know the names are there. But whoever the next oldest child, it should go right to him, right? Why? Now remember, the chroniclers are putting things back in order. That was broken through lost conquest, battle, but they have been given a right to go back. They have oral history that the whole time that they were, and now those who weren't here for Daniel, I'm speaking forward while talking about the past. All right. Those people who were under Nebuchadnezzar's control when they were falling and everything that was going on, you still had educated men and women that came into this town and maintained the oral history. In fact, the king Nebuchadnezzar, as big as his library was, he would have wanted that history because he would have considered it something that it was in his world and it would be of ownership. So a lot of the oral records and stuff that came after destruction, they point to the particular line that the throne had already been set. The throne had already been identified, and that is the line of Judah. So let's continue. So as mentioned, as an ancestor in the royal line of Judah, so we know Judah is the royal line. Descendants of Shelah and Asher. This chapter are spoken of in Chronicles 4, 5 through 7. The chapters continue to focus on what the descendants of Shelah, including Asher, who is described as the father of Tekoa. Anybody find any more information about that? I really didn't dig into a lot of it because I wanted to keep it real brief, surface, so we can get to where everybody really want to get to, and that's here about David jumping over walls and running down the wells. But we have to clean up the house to know where we are going. All right, so we have that. That's Asher. These verses provide additional details about the family and notable figures in Judah. It continues with the descendants of Caleb in chapter 4, 8 through 20. Caleb is a prominent figure in the tribe of Judah. Again, Judah is being mentioned because this is what we're talking about. In verse 8, the chapter provides detailed genealogy of Caleb's descendants and notable figures like Hur, who is the descendant who is described as the firstborn of, but where we at, Debbie? Iraph. The firstborn, EPHR. This is an 8. EPHRATHA. Yeah, we got that. Yep. Verse 8. That's Caleb. Hold on, I'm sorry. 4. I'm sorry. 4. Chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 4. Hur's family line, when they speak of her, again, I'm pulling out prominent things. I'm not going over everybody. More of the prominence of the people. Hur's family line, Hur is mentioned. through 4, and he's the firstborn of Epithereth. Aratha. Aratha. I know that, but I'm still struggling with it. I'm struggling with that F. You hear me over here? I'm the Aratha. I'm trying my best. I feel like I'm barking and growling at everybody, and I feel like the crowd is about to take off on me. All right, but I'm going to try my best. And Debbie, if I point to you, that's the lifeline. I'm asking for help. I got you. I got you. All right, I probably should have gave you my notes so you can stay with me. Like, that's the name you're trying to say. All right. Other descendants of Judah, we talk about them in 1 Chronicles 4:21 through 23. This chapter includes a list of the descendants of Judah, including the families of Shelah and descendants of Joda, because that's told with a J. Jodu. There we go. Jabez is a brief but notable figure in chapter 4, 9 through 10. I'm just gonna stop saying churn. 4, 9 through 10. His prayer to God, asking for a blessing, expansion, and protection, is recorded in the biblical narrative. Jabez's prayer demonstrates faithfulness and trust to God and providing insight to values and property of the Israelites. So again, we're showing the growth of the Judean tribe. We're showing that the people are expanding their lines. This is the line of Judah. We're talking about the people of how Judah is expanding Judah's camp. Now, remember, when they went into the lands, they were supposed to go in and take their land. Caleb was the only one who really did what he was supposed to do and eradicate everybody out of his area. Well, everybody also went into other towns and they married and intermingled. So we're going to start seeing some of that as we go through what Solomon sets up. I know it sounds crazy that I'm talking about all these people, but they're really going to lead to Solomon. And when you see it all connect, you'll say, oh, wow, those are all family members fighting. Other notable figures, Shelah is mentioned in the Chronicles. We talked about her. We talked about him, I'm sorry. An ancestor of certain families within the tribe of Judah. There was information about Shelah in the biblical narratives. His descendants play an important role in Israelite history. All right, so in conclusion, in chapter 4 provides a detailed account of Judah. Am I going too fast? Am I talking too quick? Right. Down, say, slow down now. Try it back. All right. Provides a detailed account of the descendants of Judah, highlighting notable figures and families within the tribe's genealogy, so forth and so on. That is Judah. Are there any questions that we need to go back to the text? Good breakdown. All right, so let's continue through the rest of the tribes. All right. In Chronicles 5, we focus on the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Here's a breakdown of the chapter. I want you to understand that sometimes when they mention Gad, and then you hear about a Gad, those are two different people. One is the tribe, one is the seer. They both pop up in different times, and when one pop up, don't confuse it when they say Gad is approaching, and they're like, hey, is that an army or is that a person? Most of the time, it's Gad the seer. He's rolling up on David or whoever that is the king at that time. He's rolling up. He's saying, "Hey, God said this," and they look at him crazy, and he's like, "All right, I'm out. Go talk to Nathan." Because on the prophets and seers, they always have more of one person, not just prophesizing in a town. So just keep it in mind as these names start to sound similar and they roll. Anybody have trouble with names like I do? Like when they all start to roll together. But if you can put them in the right place, somebody once told me that if you organize the cabinet, it makes things you're trying to look for in the cabinet easier to find. I'm still working on that, right, Bay? See, that's how you know I don't organize the cabinet. All right. So in this chapter, let's talk about the descendants of Reuben, mostly through chapter 5, 1 through 3. This is what we're particularly talking about. This chapter begins a list of Reuben's sons and their descendants. Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob, but we already talked about he lost his birthright due to sin. Not going to pause here for a long time, but let's take a little brief pause and acknowledge that this is the son of Israel. Yet he lost his birthright because of sin. All right. He didn't lose being a son of Israel, but he did lose his birthright. You get what I'm saying? What you got, brother?
We know this to be true. That's a good point. Sin don't discriminate. Like mankind will be like, well, it's the president or they're rich or whatever the case may be. But in God's sight, sin, no matter who you are, there's always a penalty when it comes to that.
It is. It's a penalty. It's a penalty for your actions, right? The Bible speaks about it throughout the scriptures. So Reuben lost. We know that Reuben lost his birthright. He lost his birthright to birthright was given to Joseph's son, Ephraim and Manasseh. Although Judah became a prominent tribe in the terms of leadership and royalty. So again, we know that Judah erred, but we also know that Judah still was doing the work that was to be done inside of the tribe and the family. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. This is 4 through 22. And if you notice, a lot of these may overlap or run into conversations with each other or in passing. The chapter provides a detailed account and descendants of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. This tribe sat on the east side of the Jordan River. If you want to reference this Numbers 32. And they conquer which was conquered by the Israelites under Moses' leadership. So now we're seeing a little bit of the past come back and explaining how these lands and the coast and where they kind of set at. So I don't want to erase that, man. Just follow me. Imagine a circle, all right? It's an awkward looking circle, but imagine a circle. And around the circle, all the enemies are around it. The land is divided up amongst Israel. But on this other side of the circle, or the other side of the Jordan, is a half tribe. Now, Manasseh. Now, we see what the conflict is in division of tribes. If we remember what happened with Manasseh, when they divided the tribe, what happened? When they said, we're going to stay over here. When they built an altar, it was conflict and complication, because how can you build two altars in two places where the Lord said, build it over here? What are y'all doing? They reasoned what they were doing, but we see that divide caused conflict, right? So if you can understand the divide at the river of Jordan between the tribes, it shouldn't be difficult at all to see it on a greater scale with a kingdom divided. Just keep in mind, what we see is not new. What we see is a repeat of man's mistake, salvation. Man's mistake, salvation, till we see that process play out all the way through and God lays his final process down for salvation. I've shown you so many examples to see what happens with division of family or dividing things or saying my will is here versus my will is there, versus keeping it together and just all in my son. So we see the divides coming, or we have seen them come, but now we'll see how the reconnection is at some point. I think it's like a lot of books left before see full reconnection. I think through the teachings here at Firm Foundation, them connections becoming more evident. You know, we are people that can speak, not just live of the scriptures. We can speak well of them as well. That's a good point. You got to hold on to that information. So when it comes time to save a soul, because a lot of people think that these conversations and learn this information is for debate or argument. We learn this so that we can eloquently speak to those souls that we are trying to save. And how can you speak to them about the history and lineage if it's hard for you to get through the information? So I'm just trying. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if a birthright was taken away, was this culture or was this God's doing? Like Jeconiah, God had declared that none of Jeconiah's descendants would sit on the throne. So for Reuben to lose his birthright, was that the culture's decision? Was that God's doing? And what would be the purpose? Because he slept with his father's concubine to take the birthright. Is it because the descendants would throw the inheritance out of whack?
You asked why culturally, why did he lose his birthright? Because what he did was went into what was his father's, which means he had sinned against the Lord. That's so culturally. Go ahead.
So your question is it culturally or was it Lord or God, right?
Right, like
Well, it had to be both. It had to be both.
That's what I was getting to.
Because he broke the law, basically. The law was given by God, was it not?
okay, so the law says he can't sleep with his father's concubine.
Well, he had to put it in his father's bed. Okay, it's a mixture of culture and both. I mean,
So-
when you start looking at it.
So when you ask, could you, is it a law to say you can't sleep with your father's concubine? You would go to what the law said about what it said about going into your father's woman, right? Or his wife. A concubine to us, that word means, we look at it in a different terminology, but if it was a concubine, that means that woman, just like Hagar, was under the care of that man. So for Reuben to transgress under somebody else's care, therefore, Reuben transgressed the law, which was given by God. So yes, God is the one who, when Reuben transgressed the law, he took that birthright that was his natural, which again, to take someone's birthright. We seen Jacob, how he took the birthright through deception, dressing up, funky, it has some ramification. So when God took Reuben's birthright, again, culturally he lost because of what he did, but it's still God saying he will not carry that line. It will pass on to someone else. Remember, we're not talking about the birthright of what their children. Yes, we are talking about the children, but we're talking about the line of Christ. Every time we see something that doesn't happen, it's supposed to happen. God's not resetting a plan. He's not making it up on the spot. He's not saying, well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. Everything is in key and in line for Christ to come.
Yeah.
So if he lost his birthright,
I'm just saying for learning historical purposes, was that a law that was broken where they went against what God had demanded, or was this a cultural thing? If you did this, then you're subject to lose your birthright. I guess that's where, as we continue to go through, because we're going to see a lot of people being moved in and out of the inheritance. Okay, so these people take this from themselves and say, hey, you did this no more, or God has said because of this. You know, that's
we go retrograde, right? We see in a heirs of royalty. We seen when kings decide to set themselves up as kings. We see in the era of that, meaning when David's son said, "Hey, I should be the one to assume the throne," and he went up to the mountain and he slept with all of David's concubines to prove this fact that he had in front of the eyes of everybody. Again, we see that, and we know that culturally that was a sign of disrespect. He didn't do it to David because, oh, going into my father's concubines, is just part of something. He did it to willingly spite his father, and in willingly spiting his father, he spited the law. Because if you get down to the most simplest thing, remember what David said about Saul. He said, touch not with the anointed. So we know that what David has is David's. So if someone to take from David, go ahead.
But at that time, with that specific point, David was listening to God.
Right.
You as a king, your son can kill you if he becomes if he's the next in line, he can become the king. That don't mean he was listening to God.
So your son can kill you and become the king, but is he the king? Again, we put the mental expectation of what men know, saying if a son kills a son, then he is rightful ruler as king. Well, we know that is not how the throne works of the world. And this was the line to the throne of the world. So yes, a son could kill a king and a king taker. We've seen that. We see it in scripture. We've seen it throughout history. But what we are talking about is the throne of the heavens and the earth. No one was going to intervene or kill, wasn't supposed to be killed, because the line was always supposed to lead to Christ. It's like I almost have the cheat code. Whatever you say and however we put it, when we look at the scriptures and we hold it up, it's always going to be, if this person wouldn't have did this, well, that's fine. But this person did do that. Even if it's an error for God's glory. That's the difference between just the undertaking of the throne from the killing of a son to the royal lineage that we look at. This isn't happenstance. It's a reason why they're carrying this lineage. And we know that reason was to continuously point and show, one, David's conquest, but also point to Christ. So is it culturally? Yes. It was a cultural thing that the Hebrew communities did amongst themselves, and rightfully so. Reuben probably was brought in front of the tribe. This was brought out, and instead of being stoned, he lost the most precious thing to him, which was his birthright. These were some of the ways. Remember, all judges were not unmerciful. Some judges had mercy, even in the family. He did not want to kill his son. Even though if the law may, once again, these are all questions where we can say if, what if, who did, why didn't they do this, why didn't they? But if we stick to what it said is what was taken from him because of his action.
Because it's all happened before Judgment. It's still in Genesis.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, go ahead.
It was against Israel itself.
Right.
The way the family ruled, the way that their culture itself said the firstborn will inherit this from the father.
Right.
Okay, and that was the problem was, again, they said he sinned against Israel.
And the only reason I used the judges is because they were a greater judgment for Israel because Israel was the judge for his son. Yes, sir.
I'll probably learn this, but I'm just trying to bring some clarity to this question. So we're not setting aside the sovereignty of God in your question, right?
No, not at all.
No, you're not.
When people talk about the will of God, they have to understand, are we talking about his permissive will? Meaning it was familiar, and it was a cultural insult and a breach of family trust. But what we're asking is, that wasn't part of God's declared, he allowed Reuben. He allowed them to do that. I think that would be a more permissive part of God's will out than him actually meaning allowing it versus causing it. Is that what you're getting at? I'm just.
No, I'm just looking at, okay, we're still looking at it in the end, we see Jesus Christ coming.
Right.
And just saying is the laws that govern the land, of course, God ordains those who are in authority, who's in office. So those who are in authority set these laws. And like you said, this is one of the rules of the land. And in these rules that the land have, there's a protection to make sure that the ancestry of Jesus Christ is correct. You know, so people in these rules will violate and be moved in and out to make sure that the correct ancestry is there.
One of the things that I read this weekend was he was in Exodus. I can't remember the exact chapter. It was where Moses is dealing with, where God is dealing with the Israelites and he's talking to Moses. I think when he came off the mountain, it was like, hey, I'm gonna start over with you, Moses. Like, I'm going to wipe them all out. They have been stiff-necked people. I'm going to start over with you. We see that God can literally do whatever he wants in the line on however he wants. So once you submit to the will of understanding that whatever happened, whether it was our cultural understanding by what we know as human beings, or as we see as defined by the scriptures, the coming line, the coming through the line, the line that Christ was coming through. You see what I'm saying? We have to have both of those understanding because, yes, culturally, but also to preserve the line. Like Amari was saying, it's unison, not individual. No matter where we see in any of this crazy story that we get ready to delve into, because it's going to get crazy. Kings are going to say, hey, I like her and I'd rather just do what she's doing and bring in their family and their family just rule. We're going to see those things. And this is why this question is important, because we're going to see line and birthright change. Yet, if you keep an eye on what we talk about in the genealogy, when you see that birthright change, you'll see that it may have changed sides of the tables, but it didn't change the line that it was coming. The line is always preserved. Even when we get into the very end of Kings, even as we get into the very end of Chronicles, which we won't tap to the end because we're going to bounce back and forth, we will see that the line is preserved, taken into Babylon. And eventually that man came back up and sat at a table just to preserve the line. It's not about the greatness of the man. It's about the greatness of the line being preserved. And yet in that preservation of the line, we see some of the wicked and the just. Tracking? Am I missing a point? I missed a beat. All right, let's get back into the rest of the family. This is a family reunion. I figured if we look at this like a cookout, it won't be so hard when we get up to heaven and we all walking around and they looking at us like, hi, I'm such and such. And you're like, I tried that name, but can you run it by me again? So I'm going to get real familiar with all the saints and all believers when we get up there. So I'm working on it. All right, so if you want to know about Reuben and his birthright, you can read that in Genesis 35:22 and 49:3-4. The birthright was given, as I said, to Joseph's sons, Manasseh. Yes, huh?
35.
Genesis 35:22 and 49:3-4. The tribes of Reuben, Gad. Now we're going to move on to the tribes of Reuben. This is 4-22. It's really long. This chapter provides a detailed account of the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. We talked about them and being on the side of the river. This tribe sat on the east side of the Jordan, which was conquered by the Israelites and Moses. You can read about this in Numbers 32. The tribe settlement, the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh settled on the east side of the Jordan River. They conquered the land under Moses' leadership. We already talked about the tribe campaigns are also spoken of in Chronicles 5-10 and 18:22. The chapter mentions military campaigns of the tribe of Reuben and the half tribe against the Hagarites. Got that one right. That was easy. and other neighboring tribes. I'm glad that you said other neighboring tribes and not try to throw all them names in there. We might have been here all night. These campaigns demonstrate the tribes' faith in God and trust and power. They were a military campaign. They had faith. So in conclusion, chapter 5, we talked about the accounts and descendants of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribes of Manasseh. And we highlighted some of their history. We brought back some of the things that we talked about. Are there any questions about those tribes? I know we didn't beat the drum real loud, but we definitely hit it hard. No, because I hear y'all ears ring. Y'all tracking like a trailer. Come on, keep up with me. I ain't running too fast. Just let me know. I slow down. All right. Seems like we having fun. Because I am. All right. So let's talk about Chronicles 6. Ooh, we get right. We ain't gonna make it. I don't want to speed up, man. I'm telling y'all, man. I'm like just stop. I'm trying my best. Man, it's just I'm so excited. Y'all telling me y'all not geared up to hear all the things that David did. Who read ahead? Anybody read ahead? Nah, man, just hold up. Anybody read ahead? Anybody read ahead? Like, let's take a break from the names and the tribes. Anybody read ahead? Who read ahead? One person. Just give me one. Just one. Eric said, push on, man. He said he ready to get out of here, man. He don't want to talk about how they was out. Nah, dude, man, think about it. If y'all read ahead and then everything, like, man, y'all got that conquest of the lion in y'all probably chopped at the bits too. Y'all like, man, who Gad? Who is Gad in it? Oh, all right. I got it. All right. So let's go to Chronicles chapter 6. And we're going to talk about the Levites, particularly in the priests of the Levites. And here's the breakdown. The Levites are important. All right. Now, I ain't gonna ask some more questions because Eric told me I'm asking me questions. I feel bad. And I'll just that's what the Levites, right? So the Levites, in the sense of, man, you know what? I'm gonna hold off on that. And the reason why I'm gonna hold off on it, because I didn't pull it out to give you the scriptures, but I wanted to give you another similarity to Levi. I meant to Reuben, right? Levi did not lose his birthright in the sense of what Reuben did, but Levi did lose a privilege. And he was told by his dad in a roundabout way that you won't never have anything, but your brothers will take care of you. When I go back and pull it out, I'll give you the exact script so where you can hear that the father Joseph, Debbie got me, what was it?
Chapter 49 of Genesis.
Chapter 49. That's why I like good brains, because they know things. So if y'all want to go and read that, y'all read about Levi losing his independence. And that independence, but here's the thing, that independence played out on a greater scale because we also know what the Levites were in charge of. So here's we're going to see when they going back. Now, the reason why I'm saying bring it back. The Levites are now the ones we are talking about. Are they present tense or past tense? Yeah, the ones we're going to read on. Present tense or past tense? Yeah, the one we're about to read on. The present. Because they're going to talk a little bit about the past tense. They're going to let you know they claim to fame. And then they're going to say, we are going to roll in deep and man the temples. We're going to do all the things that are the temple things that we're supposed to do. I tell you this is important because when oh, man, I almost told y'all the movie. Just know that the priest play an important role. Now, we read in the past with Absalom and all the other ones who took over, when they ran, they may have had an ear of certain people, but to have a whole group of people roll up behind him like, yeah, we with this guy, that's what we're going to see in that story. And that's that with this guy that's going to lead to that guy, and then that guy going to fight that guy, and he going to run over there and build a whole nother city. And then once he built another city, so yeah, it's just going to be all over the place like me. So hang on, hold on tight, get your plane tickets ready because we're going on a flight. All right, so Chronicles chapter 6, we're going to talk about the Levites as I gave you some of their description. This chapter will begin. We got 6, 1 through 15. Chapter begins with a list of Levi and the sons and descendants, including Aaron and his sons. And we know what Aaron and his sons did. We know some of their acts and actions. This genealogy highlights the importance of the priestly line and roles of the Levites in worship. We talked a little about how Levi got there, how the clans got to where they were, and the lineage and line, as we talked about, it gave a little bit of history like Reuben. This chapter provides detailed accounts of the priestly line, tracing it from Aaron's timeline, from Aaron to the timeline of the Babylonian exile. So again, we're tracking through the whole timeline of what we've been learning, and we're getting ready to jump right into it. Now we'll give you some of the stuff from the prophets in there, so I'm not going to leave you too empty on the inside of all the middle stuff, but we're going to be deep into it. All right, the priestly line is chapter provides details of the priestly line. Aaron. The genealogy discriminates the continuity of the priest's office and the importance of maintaining the correct lineage. The correct lineage. Correct lineage is important. You know, the more I read this and the more I study the Chronicles, the more and more I understand something that's clear and evident to me. There is only one person throughout history that has a lineage that links himself from himself to Adam. I don't care what claim, what nationality, what color, what brand, whatever you saying you from, you cannot prove it as well as Jesus Christ proved it, and therefore your word will never have any strength next to the man who could actually prove something that no other person can prove. If you can beat that feat, you know, we could just start there, let alone me explaining to you the works of the cross. Because if you can't understand the genealogy and why Jesus is related to the actual Adam, which is proven, then you probably wouldn't even understand when God was telling the woman of the things that she would experience in her child. Who is this child? Like an actual child? Or somebody who gonna make a claim? You know, imagine. Yeah, we'll talk about the claims in those days too. All right, so the correct lineage, priestly line chapter. I like the importance of the priestly line from Aaron. We spoke on that. The Levites' role, and 31 through 48, this chapter describes the Levites in the Israel worship, including music, gatekeeping, and other duties. The Levite played crucial roles in maintaining the tabernacle and later the temple. The Levite roles, they played music, gatekeeping. The importance of genealogy in the the importance of genealogy. The genealogy of this chapter demonstrates the importance of maintaining correct lineage, particularly for the priests. This emphasized genealogy, highlights the significance of Israel history and the role of the priests. We mentioned that. Worship and service, told you the things they did in worship and service. The priests and the Levites played a crucial role in facilitating worship, maintaining the spiritual health of the nation. So we see what the Levites' job was, to maintain the spiritual health of the nation. So when we see that the Levites were the first ones to return and start working on the temple and getting in the temple, we also see that the life was coming back with the people. The word was returning back to where it was at prior to destruction, which was also prophesied. Nothing is not prophesied. All right. So in chapter 6, it highlights the importance of the priestly line, the role of Levites in Israel worship. Demonstrates the continuity of the priestly office and significance of Levites. We are rolling. Y'all bear with me. They said I got 7 minutes on the back end. I might take it. All right, stop dancing. All right. So Chronicles 7, it focuses on the descendants of Ishkar, Benjamin, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim. I'm saying it right. Ephraim. I always want to add the M. And Asher. Here's the breakdown of those chapters. Let's talk about the descendants of Issachar. Yes, sir.
Before we get into 7,
Okay.
you were saying that the Levite tribe was very important.
Mhm.
Now, if somebody got it twisted and thought it was in the tribe of Levi, and of course, with that, they would probably think there was in a priestly line that they could do certain things. What would be the consequences of that mistake?
What will be the consequences of assuming?
The line of the priestly line.
I can answer that.
Because we know what they do this for, right? We know what happened to King Uzziah. So, but King Uzziah willingly went in knowing he wasn't of the tribe. But what would happen to someone mistakenly? Hey, I'm in the priestly tribe, and they decide.
Well, are we talking about an accounts of these days?
Yeah.
They die. Like short and sweet. We seen people who accidentally do stuff, you know, by accident, and you die. The art you touched it by accident and died. He's a priest. He just tried to catch it. He literally was assuming in his heart that he was doing the job. And God said, I didn't need you to do the job. For whatever reason, it was supposed to fall. And he stopped that.
Isn't that why it's so important to know your line?
Your line.
That's what I'm getting at. Okay, if they got it twisted and somebody said, hey, you from the cousin so-and-so, and you were, oh, yeah,
Come
okay,
on
I'm in the
in
priestly
here.
line.
Well, at the end of the day, I always refer to, I believe it's Titus, when he talks of genealogy and how there are pointless arguments and, you know, what to do what a decisive man once and twice, right? So when it comes to genealogy, if I was to have a conversation, I would always start with what we already are talking about right now. What proof do you have in your claim? Well, I can prove it back to X amount of generations. All right, then you're cut because your proof does not stand to his proof. So what does it matter if the proof who supersedes your proof is telling you that it's not worried, do not worry about genealogy? Why would I listen to someone who has only three, once again, I'm 3 generations of proof? Listen to 60 and how many?
42 and 20.
Right, but with the inclusion of Adam, 62. Why would I want to listen to someone who can only barely tell me their genealogy when I have someone who's telling me the full account of who he was? Yeah. And they talked about the importance of the Levites and their duties. Their duties are so important that their families didn't even stay with them.
I think the thought would be even said a certain way, different tribes would have been. They have the other tribe, they had. And you can be in the wrong tribe from sometime to March. You had.
Right.
I think, who carried the Ark of the Covenant? I think it wasn't the Levites, it was one of the other tribes. Or was it?
I believe it was the Levite. The Levite priests were in charge of the Ark of the Covenant. They carried it. They were assigned to it. They were responsible for everything inside the temple.
So even in their march, they had to be set a certain way.
Right.
They could just jump and start marching. And so they had to know what tribe it was from, so they can know where to position themselves when they move from place to place. And like you said, the Levites tribe was you got it twisted there, it was that.
You see, that's why when they encamped the tabernacle or the tent, they were assigned, like I said, assigned. You had 1, 2, 3, it's.
They have certain side.
Right, certain side, certain position, and certain, who let off first? I can't remember.
So I don't remember. I think Judah was in the front, but think of this. Think of battle position. We'll one day, when I put the tribes where they want, but think of battle position. Certain tribe in the back to protect anything from the rear. So when they moved, the tribe in the back was the last tribe to go. The tribe to the right and to the left would gather up. They would protect the middle because the Levites was in there. The strongest was most likely the older of the brothers. Again, I vaguely remember, but the oldest of the brothers, the stronger of the tribe, who when the tribe moved, they moved in conquest. The front of the tribe went, there was battle or anything that was there. The front of the tribe, which was the strongest, the older of the brothers, the strongest of the sons, whatever it may be, were there. The more people. Again, I think it was Judah and Benjamin that led the front because Judah and Benjamin was the most vicious in battle. It was said that if you've seen a Benjamite in battle, most likely he was getting owned because they loved to fight. They were fighters. They loved to protect. That got them in trouble, but we see this. So that's a battle arrangement and how they moved. And that battle arrangement was basically a cross. That cross was, again, a symbol. What was in the center of Israel, even though the battle may have been all around them, it was the center that was always the most important. In fact, when you hear of the fall of Jerusalem, they don't talk about, well, Gad is fallen, this is fallen. They just say, nope, they've sacked the heart. They have destroyed it. They have defamed the thing that is the center of our heart as Israel.
Always the tabernacle in the center.
Right.
So I just bring it out because you mentioned all these different tribes. Like I said, these tribes are not just willing in the tribes, but your name comes a certain place in a marching order. So.
When people ask about tribes or I used to feel those questions. I'm like, all right, man, let me listen to what you had to say and validity of it. And now I hear and I say, when it comes to tribes and signs, the tribe I'm in, I would always say I'm a child of God. So whatever tribe that falls in, and I believe that covers them all. And they say, what sign are you? I guess I'm a sign from God because that's about as far as I got with my identification card. That's how I identify. Why tell them anything that I cannot prove? I'm validated by the scriptures and my status, not by my own thoughts of who I should be. All right. We got about 5 minutes. We'll finish up 7 as much as we can. We'll wrap it up so we can, Yeah, we're moving. We're just identifying. Don't worry about it. You won't catch all of the ones you missed. They like the greatest hits. If you ain't catch them in the storytelling, you'll catch them in your reading and your studies. It's there. They hang out in them scriptures. They don't go nowhere. They'll pop and talk to you all day if you ask them. All right, so we left off with Ishgar, and Ishgar is known for his agricultural prosperity and their role in Israel economics. Genesis 49, 14 through 15, Deuteronomy 33, 18, and 19. The territory was fertile and productive, making them an important part of Israel's agricultural output. Here are some of the notable acts. The men of Issachar were described as men who understood the times and with the knowledge of what Israel should do. 1 Chronicles 12, 32. Bless you. Highlighting their wisdom and insight. Issachar's, well, we already got that. All right, so now we talk descendants of Benjamin. This chapter provides a genealogy of Benjamin descendants and notable figures. Benjamin was a significant tribe in Israel, producing leadership like King Saul. So again, now we see, while we're identifying, what is this getting to? Remember, we're in Benjamin now. Benjamin is the first king. When I say Benjamin is the first king, I'm meaning that that's where the first king came from in the tribe. And that's how they would have said it. In that cultural times, they would have said, Benjamin is the king. They would have acknowledged it. Saul would have been the king, but it would have been the tribe of Benjamin that would have been elevated high because they were the ruling tribe. So Benjamin would have been king. And this is how we see the anointed king come to play. Again, this whole line, this whole lineage was to get us to a king, because before we got a king, we only heard of kings where else? In other nations and other tribes, we had no king. So now we see where we're getting ready to get that king. It comes through the tribe of Benjamin, but it comes by the request of who? The people. And we know that the people were these people that we just mentioned before. So right here, before we even get into the full conversation of Benjamin, we understand what was asked of the people. Why are we at Saul? Because the people asked for a king, which means at some point, God said, Saul is my guy. He anointed Saul. The moment he anointed Saul, we saw the beginning of the what we know as the royal line. Before that, it wasn't a royal line. It was just judges and people ruling their tribes. But now we see a royal line. So we also have to see how this royal line continues, because we're going to see what Pastor Allen was talking about, right? How that royal line gets passed from one tribe to the next. So I think what we'll do, we'll stop here. We'll put a pin in it. We talked about the Benjamites, King Saul. Yeah, we'll put a pin in it right here. We'll pick right back up there and we'll continue through the tribes. Are there any questions for me? I know it's a lot. I know we're talking about the tribal stuff. I know y'all not seeing me jump over tables and do flips.